Hello and welcome to Game & Read. My name is Peter.
And I'm Erin.
And welcome to Friday Reads for the week of Friday, August 21st, 2020.
Friday Reads is where we tell you what we are reading and playing as we head into the weekend. We update you on last week's reads and plays and then end with a recommendation of a book and a game.
Nice little weekly show to get you to our next pairing.
Last week, my Friday Reads was The Boy at the Door by Alex Dahl, and I'd say it was pretty good. This is a story about this woman, Cecilia. She is living this glamorous, wonderful life. She's got a lot of money. She's got a really hot husband, 2 lovely daughters, part-time interior designer.
We can all relate to this.
Exactly, right? Like upper crust of Norwegian, her little Norwegian town. And one day she is taking her daughter home from the pool and a little boy has been left. And the receptionist asks her to take him home because they live close to each other. She reluctantly acquiesces and it sets off this chain of events and reveals secrets about Cecilia's past that she's trying to keep buried. I thought this was a fun book. It is definitely depressing. There's a lot of discussion of drug use, physical violence, child neglect. It's certainly not a happy book. It was twisty, but I guessed the twist before it was actually revealed. And I was a little disappointed about the way it ended. I felt a little bit like the author couldn't decide whether to wrap things up in sort of a nice bow or if she wanted to like leave everything messy and very Gillian Flynn-esque. I feel like Gillian Flynn is the queen of like messy, not happy endings. But The Boy at the Door really was middling. It wasn't wrapped up in a bow, but it also wasn't like actually properly messily ended. So it was a good thriller. Nothing amazing, nothing to write home about, but an enjoyable read.
My Friday plays from last week was Katamari Damacy Reroll, which is the remake of the 2004, I'm going to say cult classic Namco game in which you play the little space prince who rolls balls to suck up everything on the planet Earth and make new stars and planets and things out of them. This is a game that I really didn't have much nostalgia for. I had heard about it as a kid a little bit, but I never played it. And then I remember in college meeting some people who were fans of this game back when it came out. And a few years ago, I did play the sequel to it. We love Katamari. We heart Katamari. And enjoying that. And so this was my chance to really dig into the actual original game, or rather its, nice HD remake on the Switch. I really enjoyed playing through this. I got through all of it. It's a really short game, but that also makes it, something you can go back and revisit. It's one of those things where it's revisitable because it's always going to be kind of challenging in the same way, but also fun and funny. And you pick up different little visual jokes each time you go through. And, the whole premise is your dad is the king of all the king of the cosmos, gets drunk, destroys everything. He's like, okay, well, help me remake the stars. So he's, just tells you to make a star, and then he judges how big it is. He's often very critical and kind of mean.
He's very mean. He is just terrible. He's a terrible ruler of all the cosmos. He's a terrible dad. It's really not great.
No, but you make up for it in the end by, turning people, land, all kinds of things into stars and eventually the moon. So you make the people of Earth sacrifice their bodies and homes in order to rebuild the stars in the sky, which a small price to pay, some might say. It's quite fun. I'd recommend it. It's nice and short. The music is very enjoyable, and even when you're listening to kind of the same looping track for upwards of even 25 minutes is like the longest one, It's pretty fun and nice, and it's a cute game. There's not a ton to say that it's just worth experiencing. And it's an interesting game in that it was originally a budget game back when it first released for about $20, and I think that's around what the remake goes for at the moment. So it's definitely not a pricey game to give a shot to if you're just looking for something short, fun, cute, and you get the challenge of sucking things into a big ball.
My Friday reads this week is The Unraveling of Cassidy, Holmes by Elissa R. Sloan. I am so excited to read this book. I got it from Book of the Month. Elissa Sloan is an Austin, Texas author, which I can't help it. I love my Texas authors. And The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes is the story of Cassidy Holmes, who is a pop star, joins a early 2000s girl group, and they get famous. They, do the Britney Spears, the Spice Girls. They blow up.
Danity Kane.
They were better than Danity Kane, but similar. And the book starts out, so this is sort of the backdrop, but the book starts out where you learn that Cassidy has died, and it looks like suicide. And so the rest of the book it's told in multiple perspectives, and chronicles sort of the rise, the fall, the impact of Cassidy Holmes. It's a big book. It's over 400 pages, which I love. A huge book. Cassidy Holmes, the character, is from Texas. Again, I love my Texas things. And it's gotten really good reviews. So I'm super excited about it. That's The Unraveling of Cassidy.
And you mentioned this is a debut novel.
It is Elissa. So this is Elissa Sloan's first novel. She hasn't really written anything else. This is her debut, and it has gotten, like I said, a lot of good press so far. Well received as far as the critics and people who got early copies. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Excellent. My Friday plays for this week is a game that I don't think talked about on this podcast at all, despite being one of my most played games for the past 3 years, and that is Splatoon 2. And the reason why this is my Friday plays for this weekend is because they are doing a Splatfest.
Woohoo!
So if you're unfamiliar with Splatoon 2, it is a Nintendo-developed and published multiplayer shooter game. The twist being that you are an Inkling who is a little half-squid, half-kid humanoid being who can shoot ink with various fun weapons, as well as swim through their own color of ink. So the multiplayer is all these different types of... There's the standard turf war where you're trying to cover as much ground on the map with your color ink before time runs out. There are things like splat zones where you're covering certain areas and trying to do kind of a capture the territory. There is tower control, which is a general push the bomb into the final goal. There's also Clam Blitz, which is kind of a weird version of basketball and football, as well as Rainmaker, which is kind of a capture the flag, but you're driving the flag into the other team's area.
This is my favorite shooter game. I hate shooters. This is the best thing ever.
Right, and it's a third-person perspective shooter, and it's a little different than what a lot of people look for in shooters. However, with, say, the growing love of things like Fortnite, which is primarily in third-person-ish, there might be some love for that, but I think it's a really fun and really, really well-designed multiplayer game, and it's just something I've enjoyed playing since Splatoon 1 back in 2015. And Splatfest are special events they did for the first 2 years of the game's launch. They said that they were going to do online support for 2 years. They did, and they've only done a couple since then, just kind of for special occasions. and they are doing one of those special occasions this weekend, so I'm very excited. It's chicken versus egg. Which one would you pick? You pick a team chicken, team egg, and then you battle against the other team as much as you can, and hopefully at the end of the weekend, your team comes out on top.
And we are an egg household. In this household, we support eggs.
Yes, we love and respect all eggs. Chickens can go screw, but
that's how you get the eggs.
Well, not with chickens. They just do them
true.
all the time. But this is a game I can always just recommend so much. If you have a Switch, try Splatoon 2. I think there's a demo available. If there is, definitely try the demo. If not, I wholeheartedly recommend it if you're looking for a fun online game.
And I second that. My recommendation this week is a book I hold near and dear to my heart. It is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This book came out in 2015, so it is the 5-year anniversary of A Little Life, and I have to say this is probably maybe my favorite book of all time. It's certainly in the top 3. I absolutely adored this book. It's huge. It's like 800 pages.
Have you ever revisited it?
I have not, but I was really seriously thinking about rereading it.
You might want to. I'm curious. I haven't read it at all, so I have no strong opinions. But since you always rank it so highly up, I wonder, since you did read it now 5 years ago, if it would be worth revisiting for you.
I have been thinking about that. I very well might. It is an epic story, not in the fantasy sense, but in the just complexity sense. It is about 4 classmates. They all meet in college and they move to New York after graduation. And it's the story of their lives and their relationships together over the decades. It is depressing at times. It is joyful. It is emotional and heartfelt and earnest and sad, and it's just an amazing book. So I highly recommend it. Hanya Yanagihara hasn't written anything since A Little Life. She does have a book, or an earlier book, The People in the Trees, which came out in 2013. I have not read that one, but it is on my list. It's one of those things that I put on my list and then always forget about until I'm talking about A Little Life, to be quite honest. But A Little Life, fantastic. So that's what I recommend this week on the 5-year anniversary is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara.
To start off my recommendation, I have a minor update on my recommendation from last week. The Scott Pilgrim vs. the World video game. There's been a minor update after several people called, on Ubisoft to pursue re-releasing or at least, re-platforming the game so that it'd be downloadable on at least the platforms it used to be, and ideally current platforms or even PC, including the series creator Brian Lee O'Malley. Brian Lee O'Malley did tweet out that he had received word from Ubisoft, or at least been reached out to by Ubisoft, and that's all he said about it. So I have no idea if that's going to be a big positive or just kind of they're checking in on it, X, Y, or Z. But I really would hope that perhaps that's the very first step in maybe it getting re-released or at least available somewhere, because I think it would be very nice to have that game available on some sort of current system or PC, because it's a fun little game, and it's sad when games get deplatformed that way, especially it's generally over rights issues is the most common reason why games just disappear and never come back, is because the company who published it doesn't have rights in perpetuity, so they have to take it down eventually. But maybe that's some good news. I checked again today, so as of Wednesday there's no further update, but maybe sometime in the next few weeks we'll hear if there's some new development. My actual recommendation, I was trying to take a look for any interesting anniversaries. I saw 15 years ago, the Advance Wars Dual Strike game came out for the Nintendo DS. if you're unfamiliar, the Advance Wars series is a tactical army game in which you are controlling different troops and tanks and things of that nature, and you go through different battles and whatever the game's main story scenario. It originally, it technically goes all the way back to the NES. However, in America, it started with the Game Boy Advance. And they are really pretty solid little tactical games, kind of top-down, move tank here, fire over there. And they're, in general, I think pretty good. I played the 2 DS ones, both Dual Strike and Days of Ruin. And sadly, that series has been dormant for the past 12 years or so, since Days of Ruin came out in 2008, and it hasn't been ported. There's no collection of it, so it's not really widely available to anybody. So if you can get your hands on it, either emulating the DS or finding an actual copy, I'd recommend them. Or I know there are some games that are trying to kind of pick up that mantle of the enjoyable kind of tactical army game, including a game called Tiny Metal, which I know is available on the Switch by the developer Area 35. So if you're looking for something, in that range, I haven't played it, so I can't speak to how good it is overall. I heard some positive things, but if you're looking for an army tactical game, I know Tiny Metal falls into that inspired by Advance Wars category. So that is my recommendation, Advance Wars or something similar to it.
That's all we have for this week's Friday Reads. You can listen to all of our past episodes and pairings on SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find all of our content at gameandread.wordpress.com.
You can find me on social media. My Twitter is at NerdInTheWorld. I also manage our little Instagram page for Game and Raid.
I am over on Twitter at BookishTextPat and on Instagram at A Tale of Two Shelves.
Our intro music was written and performed by Avery Murchison. There's a link to his Bandcamp in our episode description.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Game and Read.